And in today's show, I am greeted by Mr. Paul Gilmartin, who's the host and creator of the Mental Illness Happy Hour, a weekly podcast that delves into mental health, addiction, trauma, and the human condition. A comedian and former host of American TBS's Dinner and a Movie, Paul created this space for candid discussions around emotional struggles with both experts and everyday people, both sharing their experiences. So, through his humor and vulnerability, he has built a supportive community for those facing mental health challenges. So, welcome to the show, Paul. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Ah, no problem at all. So, what inspired you to start the mental illness happy hour?
Um, I think the inspiration was the camaraderie, the humor, and the tools I discovered in support groups that I had to start going to save my life from, drug addiction, alcoholism, all sorts of other intimacy disorders.
Mm,
Um, and And I realized, wow, there's such a community of support and comfort. And so I wanted to bring comfort. I didn't want to be the solution or
yeah.
pretend to be the solution for people. I wanted to be comfort, entertainment, an occasional, tidbit of wisdom here or there. But I wanted to give hope to people who thought that they were terminally unique and there was no hope, because that's how I felt before I got help. And discovering the power of vulnerability and the power of just one person sharing their story, I was like, wow, stories are so much better than somebody reeling off stats or saying this or that. There was no, when I started in 2011, there was really no space um, in podcasting around mental health, at least that I was aware of, that ha would have the occasional dark joke or compelling story from somebody. It was either kind of precious and new agey or dryly academic or somebody, like Dr. Phil, barking at people about what they needed to do. And I just felt like, I think it could help people, and I think I would enjoy doing it. And honestly, I also wanted to feel seen. I've always wanted to feel seen.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. Wow. Yeah, I think back in 2011, yeah, it definitely wasn't so vast as much as it is now. I mean, you only have to go on to the podcast channels and there's so much about mental health and trauma. Like
So
trauma's just
much.
blew up, hasn't it, in recent years?
It has, and that's like the great thing is the discussions are so much more widespread than they used to be. The
Yeah.
bad news is it's harder to get listeners because there's so much competition. But the reason I started was because I wanted to help, and I thought that I would enjoy doing it.
Absolutely. But, you are obviously used to being in the limelight because you were the host of TBS's Dinner and a Movie. So, how was that for you? How was it to be in the limelight then?
Complicated because when I started in 1995, I was still, I don't know, 8 years away from getting sober. So 8 years of kind of having some of my dreams come true, uh, being financially successful, getting some recognition, having a steady job, not having to be on the road doing stand-up all the time. Um, there were many parts of it that were great, but the autonomy that you have when you're doing stand up, you sacrifice that when you start doing TV. People will say, you can't do that, that the joke is too dark, or the sponsor doesn't want their product on the counter while you made that joke, and things that would just drive me up the wall. And so, learning to compromise, and I suppose also just a really mean critical voice in my head. You put the pressure I should say, I put the pressure on myself of always thinking, oh my God, there's a million people watching this. If I do a bad comedy bit, it's the end of the world. It just, total self-obsession. It's like nobody really gave a shit. And it was a good show. I worked with for the most part really nice people and I was very blessed. But when you're dealing with untreated trauma, untreated addiction,
Mm.
it- your perspective is the thing that suffers. And
Yeah.
yeah, there can be external losses, wreckage, etc. But for me, a lot of it was internal, was just suicidal thoughts and dreading doing this show. I dreamed about being on TV, and here I was, and I would dread it. I was never excited to go to work because of the self-imposed pressure. And that doesn't mean I never had fun. It was just the fear. I was ruled by fear and self-centeredness.
Wow. So where did all of this stem from? Was it childhood trauma?
Well, I asked my psychiatrist one time, I said, what is it that I have? And he said, treatment-resistant depression due to childhood adversity. And I was like, that goes nice on a business card. Uh, so, yeah, I suppose that's where, and alcoholism and addiction runs in my family. Yeah, it's everywhere in my lineage. So, I don't think my childhood made me
Mhm.
an addict and alcoholic. I think it probably just flipped the switch a little earlier than
Yeah.
it might have.
What age were you when it started?
Well, I started drinking and doing drugs at 14, but you know, uh, fantasy and sex and love addiction. When you're raised in a household where you're sexualized by a parent, in my case, it was my mom, sex for many survivors is the thing that you then use to soothe you. And so just being in fantasy about girls was just ruled my life. An example I think of is in third grade. I had a crush on Brenda Kidd, and they would assign the first day of school, they would assign the desks that you were going to have for the rest of the year. And I just remember thinking, please, God, put me next to her. Please, God. And I didn't get that. And I would just remember feeling like the world was ending. And because I would get high just being around a girl I had a crush on. And I remember Bill Schreiber got the desk next to her. And I just remember thinking, God, I wish I was Bill Schreiber. And yes, I don't think it's unusual to have a crush on a classmate, but it was and there was also a component to it. I don't know what the word would be. I suppose not feeling safe around my mom. I kind of was anointed her therapist around 7 or 8, where she would complain to me about her marriage and break down and cry, and I just felt like, oh, I've got to keep my shit together. Um, to keep mom happy. And I remember having this fantasy, it's God, right around that time, and lasted for decades, about wanting to go up to a girl who was a couple of years older than me and on the playground and just have her hold me and cry. And I didn't understand at the time, what is this about? Where is this urge from? And of course, I was looking for a mother. I was looking for comfort, protection, to feel seen. And so that played out in my life, just being wanting comfort, but not knowing how to go about doing it in a way that was healthy or acceptable.
Yeah, wow, understood. Sound like you had a lot to deal with at such a young age, a lot of pressure placed on you. And I was going to also draw to the light of the fact that, we we know with artists in general, there seems to be like a pattern with creatives where because they're just so unique and they're just so talented. Amy Winehouse, for example, you know,
Mhm.
at such a young age, she wanted to end her life because there was so much obviously pressure placed on her, and she obviously wasn't fulfilling her own desire and her own life. And because
And
she was,
same with Whitney Houston, surrounded by leeches.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So do you feel like a lot of that had a part to play with yourself as well?
As an artist, no, because I was never to the level where, sycophants were surrounding me or,
Yeah.
I was being hounded by
Or
my notoriety was a sliver. So I could walk the streets freely with it. Yes, sometimes people would say, "Oh my God, you're that guy from that thing." Um, but for the most part, no, it was not. And I had wanted fame ever since I was a little kid. I thought it was gonna, you know, bring me peace, cure me, whatever. And what I realized when I got a little taste of it is it doesn't satisfy you. Yeah, it can give your ego a little boost here and there, but more than anything, it just gives you, there are just more opinions
yeah.
about you, good and bad. And so if you let that define your self-worth, ooh, or try to control it, when I
Wow.
see people who are really famous trying to control their image, I just think, oh my God, that I do not envy that person. I've always wanted the financial freedom of
Yeah.
somebody who's successful and famous, but as far as like the scrutiny, um, it's weird. It's hard to get recognition without all the other bullshit that comes with it. I've
Yeah.
always thought being an author where people don't know what you look like, that would be the sweet spot because you could pull it out when you wanted to and
True.
hide it when you wanted to.
Yeah, very true. Oh my God, yeah. And I went through that journey as well where I felt like I was hiding behind my book, but it wasn't good for me because I needed to come out. I needed to talk about it because I was still very suppressed, not communicating how I really felt. So yeah, just by podcasting really helped me.
What was your book about?
Same victim to victor. So it's the
Yes.
same title, yeah.
And I know your listeners have heard your story before, but can you give me some broad strokes?
Oh yeah, can do, yeah. Even though this is your show, but yeah, but childhood trauma from the age of 3, I suffered, and it was only 3 decades later that I actually started to acknowledge and accept what had happened to me because I'd blocked it out for so long. And again, like yourself, a lot of repetitive patterns of more trauma, so more like abusive partners. I kept drawing in, and drug abuse, alcohol abuse, three
Mm,
times suicide attempts. So yeah, but people just used to think I was just crazy and off the radar and loopy loo. But it's all a consequence of what happened to me. I was reckless, and I had zero respect for myself. So, and this is why it's been such an important journey for me to now be sharing and to help others to heal as well. And for them to understand that it wasn't their fault what happened to them.
yeah, yeah, that giving weight to what happened to you, not to demonize the
Mm,
perpetrator, but to stop demonizing ourselves. When I gave weight to the things that my mom did, really kind of creepy,
yeah,
um, quasi-sexual things
yeah,
around my body, and she would disguise them kind of under the taking care of my body in a way that a mom would. And I remember feeling creeped out, but just saying, "Moms don't do that. Moms don't do that." And when I finally gave way to it and broke down in my, I don't know, would have been late 40s, 2012, my then wife said, "I've been waiting 20 years for you to say this." But if we're not ready to give weight to it, nobody can tell us,
yeah,
you know, what happened to you was serious. We have to do that
exactly.
ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And what happened to us wasn't our fault because the amount of self-blame that we carry throughout our life. I don't know about yourself, but I know it's common amongst girls in particular, just thinking, oh, it was my fault. I drew the
Mhm.
attention to myself, I shouldn't have worn that, or I shouldn't have acted that way. And then that's probably why a lot of perpetrators get away with it because
Yep.
victims just feel it was their fault. It's
And
a
they're
shame.
brilliant at grooming, at making you think whatever it is that they want to make you think, doing it slowly. And the thing that I think is a real, can I swear?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, the thing that is a mind fuck for boys is getting an erection. There's one time I got an erection. My mom was giving me a bath at like 12, which was so, you know,
yeah.
fucked up. And I remember feeling like I'm a monster, like who gets an erection in front of their mom. But
Mm,
um, as a therapist said to me, you grew up in a sexually charged environment, and it was very, very confusing. And
yeah,
um,
sounds.
stopping blaming myself was a really big chance for me to begin to heal and to mourn what
Mm,
that little boy went through. And
mm,
my mom she's not a terrible person. She's a sick person. There were many qualities that she had that were great.
mm,
Um,
mm.
but the arousal part is a real mindfuck. Your body and your soul can experience two completely different things at the same time.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, did she ever get sectioned, or was there any diagnosis for her condition?
What does sectioned mean?
Oh, I mean, like, does she get was there any kind of diagnosis, I guess? Yeah.
No, no,
Okay.
there wasn't. But my kind of dime store opinion, and the opinion of some of the therapists I've had, is she showed a lot of signs of borderline personality disorder,
Yeah.
which doesn't mean that somebody is going to abuse a child,
No, no,
but
no.
and honestly, I think there was some dissociation too, because
Probably.
she would it was like almost sometimes like her personality would change. She would get quiet, and then it was almost, she wouldn't use a different voice, but there was like, it was almost like she was looking through me, like there was somebody that wasn't home.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, but it's like she wasn't there, she was somewhere else, but yeah, her
Yeah.
the physical form was there and yeah, I actually can understand that. Wow, so yeah, it does sound like you've had a traumatic childhood.
Yes, I can say that now, but even there's still a part of me that's like, oh, you imposter. You're doing this for attention.
Oh
It
God.
wasn't that bad. Other people had it worse. You're misinterpreting it. You're misremembering it. Um, and I know
Yeah,
that that's common, but it's a mind fuck, and
yeah,
it's exhausting.
the inner critic again, like you said. Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
Comes up to play, doesn't it, when we don't want it?
It
Ah,
does. One of the most comforting things a therapist said to me one time was she said, Paul, if we could go back in time and I was a therapist who heard what was happening to you, you would have been removed from the home.
wow.
And that blew my mind. That blew my mind. And that also helped me. And the other thing she said was almost every survivor minimizes it. She said that she had clients whose parents involved them when they were kids, parents who involved them in child pornography where there was BDSM, and they
Oh
said,
God.
but it wasn't that bad. Other people had it worse. So it never ends. It
Yeah.
never ends until we decide to say, I'm going to give way to this. And the phrase that I remember saying to myself was, what if I'm not making too big of a deal of it. Let me just explore that.
Yeah.
And that changed everything.
Uh, I like no, but I like the way you say that, it's we have to give weight to it. I think that's a really beautiful way of saying it. Yeah.
Yeah, to stop punishing ourselves.
Yeah, we do, yeah. So just thinking about your podcast. So what are
Mhm.
some of the most memorable guest stories that you've featured?
Oh boy. Um, One of the first time I had a listener on as a guest, I had never intended to have listeners on as guests, but very soon after starting the podcast, I started getting emails from listeners who would share bits of their story. And um, a woman who emigrated to the United States from Iran shortly after the Ayatollah took power
Um,
shared a bit of her story. And I was like, wow, your story is fascinating. And her name, um, I'm blanking on her name, Nadare Fanoyan. And she came on and she shared her story, which was mind blowing. She was a Marxist, and the Ayatollah was eliminating anybody who was a threat to their power when they first came to power in the late 70s, early 80s in Iran. And so her husband was arrested and executed, and she was pregnant with their child, and she had to flee the country. And that's just the beginning of her story. Um, so that was a memorable one. I think one of my favorite episodes from the first year is a woman named Teresa Strasser. And her episode, it's a listener favorite, and it to me, she shared about wanting to kill herself because she she felt like she was never going to be a good enough mother. She had a young child, and um, and yet she also brought such humor to the episode, and I was like, this is the wheelhouse where the podcast lives. Having guests on who helped me navigate my abuse and my um, confusion. Dr. Jessica Zucker, she's been on two or three times, and that's a popular episode with listeners. The first time she interviewed me because um, it, it's like the listeners could hear in real time my brain struggling to find out where the truth was. Um, that's a good one. Um, oh my God, there's so many. There's so many.
wow.
Yeah,
I know, I can tell you're struggling to like pinpoint.
yeah. It's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. So how do you manage your own mental health while you're engaging with such difficult topics and so regularly?
That's a good question. I really try to protect my battery. Um, I have kind of a line of protection in
Mm,
terms of interacting with listeners, particularly via emails. I try to be helpful in responding to them. I try to respond to every email that I get.
mm,
But I have to make sure to not get drawn into trying to save them, trying to be their go-to person. I will share resources with them. I will let them know you're not alone. You know, what happened to you is valid, et cetera, et cetera. But if I started getting pen pals where, they were expecting more from me than I can give,
yeah.
it would drain me. If somebody's suicidal, I direct them to suicide hotline or therapy or something else because I'm just a guy that toured around the country telling dick jokes. I don't have a degree in mental health. I'm a peer, so I try to remember that. Um, so protecting my battery,
Mm,
half of the podcast is interviews, the other half is me reading surveys that were filled out anonymously online by people. And so they dump some really, really dark, heavy shit in those surveys. And I used to read a ton of them. There's a survey called the Shame and Secrets Survey, and about 10,000 people have filled that out. And I used to be able to keep up with
Mm,
it. And then I had to start to protect my battery because it was just too heavy. So every week I will maybe only read probably a maximum of six of those to choose what to read on air because any more than that, I listen to my body when it starts to say, okay, we've had enough
mm,
of this. So those things are how I try to keep myself in check. And there are weeks where I honestly do not want to do the podcast.
mm.
I used to be able to have the luxury of taking 8 weeks off a year and run best of episodes. But, you know, it's it's challenging bringing new listeners in because there's so much competition, as I said. And so now, I haven't had a week off this last year, and I can kind of feel that I really would like a couple of weeks off. So, yeah, it can be tough. There's external pressures.
Absolutely, yeah. When there's so much demands placed on you, and how
What do
regular?
you do? Do you feel your battery sometimes getting drained? And
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean, I had season one, and then I took 2 years out anyway to have a baby, and I've started season two now, and what I'm doing is only posting once a week. So, how many times do you?
once a week. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, is
once
it
a week.
okay? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
I thought
uh,
about going to twice a week and I was like, no, there are weeks that I can, you know,
It's a lot. Yeah, it's a
yeah.
lot. Yeah, absolutely. So,
And
yeah, I mean,
and and
yeah,
and how do you handle when somebody wants more from you than you can give?
a lot. Yeah, they do. I mean, I just find now we're just available on so many different channels and, ping, ping, ping. It can get really crazy. So, I have my nighttime mode set on my phone. So from like 8 p.m. until 8 until the next day 7 a.m., which means I can't, nobody can disturb me. I have my notifications off anyway, but sometimes, with
Mhm.
text messages and stuff that they come through. And so yeah, that's how I preserve my battery.
Right.
And yeah,
They're
I
calling your phone number or you're talking about messages via social media?
yeah, mainly like messages, WhatsApp messages, so
I
there's so
got you.
many different pings that can come through. Isn't there? It's like, you got your Facebook, your Instagram, your TikTok, your Messenger.
Yeah.
It's it's just crazy. And
I,
emails.
I I will go sometimes 2 months without looking at my messages on Facebook and I feel terrible, but it's uh,
Brilliant. It's
yeah,
good. It's just
and I
the
apologize when I do respond
yeah.
to somebody, but we gotta protect our battery.
It's relentless, yeah. And also, when you're creative, like we obviously are, I just feel like we do need a lot of time alone as well, away from
Oh my God.
distractions, so that we can just be, in our own minds. And that's where the creativity flows for me. Just,
Hmm.
just
In
being
terms
there.
of writing or what?
Yeah, just ideas. I'm a very, personality scales. I'm a very yellow personality scale. Literally off the scales. Yeah, I've got so many ideas all the time. And so, like now I'm in the middle of actually writing a screenplay for a movie, and I'm now about to write my sixth draft. And so a lot of ideas have to come to me now as to how to improve the script. So,
Mm,
but then I need to be in a relaxed state in order for the ideas to come. It won't come if I'm on the go or stressed out or, have so much going on in my head. And it's like just things like making decisions. I just find, I want to be able to make decisions on the important stuff. Things like what to wear or what to eat. I don't want to waste too
yeah.
much brain power on stuff like that.
I have been stuck. We were talking, I think, before we started recording that one of my hobbies and now kind of moving into a pursuit of
Mm.
selling it is making furniture, which I do in my garage, and it's been a passion of mine for 20 years. And my living room is overflowing with furniture I made, but I have not gotten around to selling because I can't make the decision of what I want to call the company. I slapped one together called MIHH Furniture. It's on Instagram, which was just okay, let's get something
Mhm.
out there, but I want to change it because it's so bland. But I can't think of one. And I instead of really just sitting down and saying, okay, I'm going to work one out, I've gone back to playing video games to escape the
Oh,
pressure. And I feel some shame
interesting.
around that. Um, it
Yeah,
it's
coping.
it's
So-
coping.
and it's a fight, flight, or freeze response again. Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. Very interesting. Yeah.
But I love being in the shop. That's my happy place. When I walk in there, I put my apron on, I turn the air compressor on, and I feel like I can breathe.
Yeah.
The rest of my life, I just can't take as deep of a breath. It feels like I'm getting into a jacuzzi. The solitary nature of it, the being present, how much of my brain it consumes, the focus.
Yeah.
It's great, but I don't want to do the business side of it. And I'm really acting like
Mm.
a child or an adolescent in terms of saying I'm only going to do the part of it that's fun.
Well, there's a couple of things here. Number one, I feel like it should be named your surname, Gilmartin's Furniture or something.
Well,
Yeah.
here's the problem. There was a guy named Joe Gilmartin who was a semi-famous furniture. He's since passed,
Oh,
but I don't want it to be confused with his furniture.
gotcha.
So,
That's a
I mean,
shame.
I could call it Paul Gilmartin,
Yeah.
Furniture
Yeah.
Studio, but I don't know. Maybe that's what I should do.
Definitely. Yeah. And then I think you should get a partner on board to deal with the business side of it. Mm.
But then I don't have the money yet to pay someone, and
Yeah, there's a lot
yeah,
of setbacks.
and then
Yeah.
100 thoughts go through my brain, and then I want to take a nap because I feel depressed, like I'm never going to be able to figure it out.
Oh, interesting.
That's
Okay.
how my brain works.
Right, got you. Yeah. Well, I mean, I was going to go on to that as well. So, because empathy and vulnerability are a big part of a lot of your talks. So how has like creating this podcast and this platform actually impacted your own views on empathy and human connection?
Oh my God. I can't overstate it.
Mm.
It's saved my life. I
Oh,
used to think that safety would come from being impressive, that then financial security would come from it, and that would bring a feeling of safety and peace. And I realized it's actually just the opposite. It's being one of many. That's what I found in my support group. That's where I felt the comfort, the peace, the feeling that this is where I'm supposed to be in the universe, the feeling of meaning and purpose. That has supplanted the desire to be famous, and not that I don't want recognition or, all that other stuff, but it was killing me trying to stand out and then wondering why I felt apart from everybody.
okay.
Looking back, it's like, of course you felt alone. You were trying to stand alone,
Mm.
but only by being with a group of people and revealing my crazy and my ugly side and all that other stuff, my wreckage. Only by doing that and feeling unconditional love did I realize, oh my God, this is the path.
Yeah, amazing that. Thank you. Yeah. And so what advice would you give to somebody struggling with a vulnerability or, seeking help right now.
Find your people. They're out there. You may not get it on the first try, the second try. I'm just a big, big believer in support groups, whether they're
Mm.
12-step or otherwise. Therapy, so helpful. I try anything and everything. I see a psychiatrist, you know, I go to therapy right now. I'm currently not, but and I go to support groups a couple of times a week, and I shudder to think what my life would be without it. Um,
Interesting.
and the
Yeah.
feeling of I get when I help somebody who rolls in for the first time to our support group, and I can let them know, hey, you're right where you should be. All these thoughts you're having, these feelings that you're having, this is textbook for our brains. This is a thing. This is not your personal failing. You're up against something that is bigger than you are, but together we can tackle it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I suppose then when it comes to all of the addiction recovery programs, a big thing in those is support as well.
Oh my God, it's everything.
Mm,
It's everything. Yeah.
thank you. That's amazing. So I just wanted to ask as well. So what misconceptions about mental illness do you encounter frequently in your work?
The shame
Yeah.
around it, it it's amazing to me that we think of it as weakness, as facing that. You know, you're when you face your addiction, your childhood trauma, whatever it is, you are stopping from running away. You're turning around and you're looking into the jaws of the beast. That is the ultimate bravery. And I will say to people new in recovery, you're a fucking warrior. You're not running from this. Your feelings won't kill you, but running from your trauma and your addiction might. It is the bravest thing we can do. To ask for help is one of the bravest things we can do. And it's just smart. If you were a general and you were getting your ass kicked in a battle, would
Mhm.
you be a bad general for calling in reinforcements? No.
Yeah.
But we tell ourselves that.
We do, yeah. That's a really good way of seeing it as well, actually. Yeah. And a lot of people don't because even when you are, in that mindset growing up, the ego just takes over anyway, doesn't it? Defense mechanisms and the barriers are up and you just think that no one's going to understand me, and I can deal with this myself, I'm strong enough. I don't need anybody. You see that a lot, don't you?
Oh my God.
I feel like
The
majority of people are like that.
Yeah, the insanity of thinking, the brain that is wounded, that we're going to use the brain that is wounded to heal the wound. One of the analogies we have is that don't try to give yourself a haircut. Go to somebody else. Their perspective on it is helpful. They're looking at it from another angle. The
True.
detachment that we can have of looking at somebody else's struggle with objective eyes, detached from the fear and all of the distorted thinking,
Yeah, true.
is so helpful. I can help people get a perspective on their problems, and they can help me, vice versa. It's not about intellectual capacity as much as it is perspective and meaning and purpose. Meaning and purpose brings perspective. It
Yeah,
does.
it does. Yeah, yeah. It does. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Just having a meaning and a purpose to, yourselves and maybe even what happened to you. I know that's a hard one and
I
you know,
agree.
that
I
would be a hard
agree.
one. Yeah, because
I
then
had
so oh
go ahead.
no, go.
Okay. I had a moment when I was processing the childhood sexual trauma where I was still very confused. And I was in a workshop for one of my support groups. And we had broken off into discussion groups, and there was about seven of us in this little room. And as we're sharing, we're each going around, and I'm hearing my story come out of everybody else's mouth. And in that moment, it went deeper than me knowing I was not alone. I felt in my body that I was not alone and that this was no accident and that the universe hadn't hated me or merely tolerated me for all of my life, but maybe it picked me
Yeah.
because it valued my skill set to go help other people. And in that moment, I felt God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, come into my chest. And I broke down and I started crying tears of joy for 45 minutes. I cried through that meeting because I realized this is not an accident. It's a big burden to shoulder. And there's many times I wish that I hadn't experienced those things, but I wouldn't have the meaning and purpose I have in my life without it. Um,
True. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And so what are your future hopes now for the mental illness happy hour and its listeners?
to keep it fresh, to keep having voices that can be helpful to the listener, especially marginalized voices. Um, those are those are very helpful. Um, do you ever get to Los Angeles?
Oh, I haven't been for a while actually.
If you come, you would be a great guest on the
Oh,
podcast. I would love to because I only do in person. Um, but
dear.
I would love to have you as a guest. So my goals for the podcast is to grow it. It's difficult these days. It's hard to get that,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh, that's
especially because I hate social media. So
oh, so you only do in person podcasts.
every once in a while, if it's like I had Peter Levine on, who is the guy who created somatic experiencing, and
Yeah.
I did that one remotely. But the nature of my podcast, I just feel like it's better in person.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's kind of and I've had experiences doing remotes where the audio was kind of shoddy and I don't I don't know.
Oh,
I, so yeah, I just like to do in
oh,
person. So
interesting.
get your ass to LA and come on my show is what I'm saying.
Oh, love it. Yeah. Woo. An excuse to go to LA. Oh, fantastic. That is. And so you don't do social media, but where can my listeners
I
find you?
do, but I have somebody that volunteers and helps me with it. Um, but she has a full-time job and it doesn't get really the kind of effort um, that it requires to grow it. One of the things that I keep meaning to do is I want to release YouTube videos that are montages of people describing their struggles in their own words in a kind of condensed, poetic way. But I don't have the bandwidth to put that together. The material is there. It needs to be sorted and organized. So there are things that I think could go viral and could help people, but I would rather be in my furniture shop making furniture. And it goes back to that kind of kid that I have in me that is like throwing a tantrum. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
There's many days I don't want to be an adult.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. I was just thinking, have you done much inner child work?
Um, a bit, through some of the modalities that I did, like a really profound one was doing somatic experiencing. And that really helped me with some medical trauma I had as a kid. kind of medical, kind of sexual, it had to do with um, my genitals and operations and stuff like that, and kind of
Oh,
creepy mom stuff. And that was profoundly healing because it was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life, and I'd never really unpacked it. And somatic experiencing gets into the trauma being held in the cells of your body rather than releasing it through talking. Because I talked about it quite a bit, but I had never um, released the trauma from my body. So I've done some inner child work. Is there a specific modality that you're referring to, or you just mean?
just yeah, in general, yeah, because I've we do a lot of inner child work in my trauma practice as well. And yeah, it's just kind of really a lot of it's visualization work, just s- connecting with you when you were a child, when those things were going on, and just you know it,
Yes, I've done
oh,
some of
that's
that. So
yeah, oh,
yeah,
that's yeah,
talked a lot about it with therapists
yeah,
and in my support groups and stuff like that. But
yeah, well,
um, I also feel like there's some remnants there
mm,
that I think there's a fear of the responsibility of success. There were times that I had opportunities in my stand-up career um, that I kind of turned down. I kind of sabotaged because the thought of my career expanding was kind of terrifying to me.
interesting. Wow, still a lot of fear, isn't there?
Yeah,
Do you find from all the practices that you've done, do you find somatic has been the most effective
that and EMDR
thing?
and therapy in my support groups. But the modality of somatic experiencing got to the core of something in a way that none of the other ones have. I mean, I was
Mm.
in that moment, and I thought it was smoke and mirrors at first. I was like, "Oh, this is a bunch of new age horse shit." And I told the practitioner that, and she laughed and she said, "I thought the same thing when I started doing it." But there was a voice in my head that was like, "Just try this. It's worked for other people. Just try it." And the sixth session I did with her, everything broke wide open, and it. I was laying there and it's like I was that 11-year-old boy laying on that doctor's table, naked, exposed, feeling like a piece of meat, nobody protecting me, a herd of people watching it. And I found the words that I couldn't say as that 11-year-old boy. And the practitioner was saying, I'm here, you're safe. I'm here, you're
Yeah.
safe. And so being able to say those things and feel seen and heard and safe um, was really profound and healing. So
Yeah.
I really recommend for anybody who feels like they're just spinning their wheels in talk therapy. And I'm not saying talk therapy is not great. It's great for
Mm.
certain things, but as you know, sometimes there's certain things that only EMDR or somatic experiencing or some other modality can really kind of get to.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, because we all know now the body keeps the score, and we need to work more of the body. And for some people just simple exercises work, don't they? Just going for a walk, or dance therapy is really popular at the moment. And people lift weights to go to the gym. It's all movement, isn't it? It's all unlocking the trapped energies that we've been keeping for so long. And
I had,
also, oh
go
yeah,
ahead.
I was going to say also, like, in my experience, I found, as the trauma was released, I started to lose weight as well.
Oh, wow. And what was the modality that released the trauma for you?
Guess a lot of it was healing. So for me, it was energy healing, like Reiki and emotional freedom therapy, like tapping.
Gotcha.
Because I just had all my chakras, they were blocked, all my chakras were, and it took a while for everything to, like all my energies to run smoothly again in my body.
It's amazing the feeling. I also had a couple of profound EMDR sessions, and there was one in particular where I slept for almost 2 days after it. And the next time I play hockey, and the next time I went to play hockey, I felt like my body had been, like all my joints had been oiled. My muscles felt more alive, my joints moved more freely, and I was like, wow, I am a believer.
Yeah,
I am a believer.
yeah, it is. Yeah, it's amazing work, and yeah, congratulations on your successes so far.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Yeah. So, oh, lovely. So, I will be putting in your links in this podcast episode for people to connect with you. And who knows, there might be your social media person out there as well.
Yeah. Um, and if you would put the link to my furniture, for right now, it's an Instagram called MIHH Furniture, but
Okay.
I make some really beautiful stuff, and that's um, uncomfortable for me to say, but it's true.
It's
It's
true.
true.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, no, I will do, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And who knows? There might be your next partner as well who'd want to join you. And yeah, I was thinking about like the partnership. Really it should
Mhm.
be somebody coming in where you both got like a mutual goal to run a
Yes.
business. Rather than having to pay out employees, I'm not really into that. I'd rather come
Yeah.
in like mutual, interests and have a share with the company.
Yeah.
Mm.
That would be great because I love the designing, the grunt work of building things, repeating and building the thing over and over again isn't as satisfying to me as coming up with the idea and the prototype. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I love building, but my real passion is coming up with new ideas and building prototypes.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah. I wish you all the success. And yeah, I can't wait to
Thank
have a
you.
look at your store as well.
Thank you. Love talking to you.
Likewise. So thank you so much, my listeners. That's all we have time for today. And thank you again, Paul, for coming on. And if you do have any questions, people, then please do reach out to Paul. I'm sure he wouldn't mind.
Of
It might take him
course.
2 months to get back to you, but he'll get back to you.
I'm really good at getting back to people.
Oh, are you? Fantastic. Oh, that's good then, yeah. As long as it's not on Facebook.
That's right. That's right. That's the truth.
Yeah,
I hate Facebook, but yeah, it is what it is.
brilliant. Oh, thank you so much, everyone. And yes, I shall see you all in the next show.